If you think that way about secondary sources, then why do I always make content as a secondary source? Well, people really did forget their middle school lessons. It's simple. The purpose of secondary and primary sources are two different things. The purpose of a secondary source is awareness and analysis. The purpose of a primary source is to be an authority on information. So for example, when I make these videos, right? If I make a video about a scientific finding, I made one recently. I made one about evidence of negative time. This video that I'm making, the video that I made before, that's not an authority on information. That's the starting point for you to go read the primary source, which is the study. By making this video, I've made you aware that this study exists. I could give you an overview, I could give an analysis of it, but you're supposed to read the study. You shouldn't say, oh, My Life as an RPG made a video that said negative time exists, so it must exist. No, you should go to this study, and then you'd see that what this study was studying was that photons can excite certain types of atoms, specifically rubidium in this case, in ways that are quantumly weird. Like, for example, they could appear to exit the atoms before they enter a low energy state. That's not nearly as entertaining as evidence of negative time found, right? But it is more accurate, which is why you should read the study. When it comes to literature and media, secondary sources are great for hearing other people's readings of something, but other people's readings are not an authority. They're just one way you could read the text. The text is the authority. If I'm over here saying one of the core themes of One Piece is that we should be skeptical of large states that may not have our best interest in mind, you don't have to take that as truth. In fact, you shouldn't. That's my reading. Or rather, that is a reading from one person and possibly multiple people. But it's not the reading. This is a secondary source. To decide whether that's your reading, you need to read the text, which would be One Piece. So when an influencer says, oh, well, the One Piece planet is like a million times bigger than ours or something like that, I mean, that's fun to think about as a secondary source, but it's not an authority. The authority is the text. The authority is the author, and Oda explicitly does not draw things to scale. At which point, you cannot use pixel scaling as a fact in your reading, because it is no longer a fact. We have evidence that it is not drawn to scale. So that is your interpretation, thus it is a secondary source, thus it doesn't have to be correct. It's as valid as anyone else's. So Saiga Runner was having that discussion saying everything in the text so far does not support the fact that the One Piece planet is so much bigger than ours. And he was using the text to show that. The text. One Piece. Manga. Dead tree format. If your counter to that is some influencer said otherwise, if your counter to that is that I said otherwise, that's a less important source. That's a less valid source. The text is the most valid source. The primary source is the most valid source. Secondary sources are just jumping off points for you to do your own shit. You're there to raise awareness, not to be an authority.